Hello and welcome back to another brand new video. Now, so with Marky Mark leaving Honda after all this time, the news is out. Everyone is shocked. Not really. I kind of expected it, but when it comes to a, I suppose, AAA superstar that you would class Mark Marquez to be in, that kind of the Jordans, the Verstappens, the Rossies, kind of, you'd hold them to the same level as that. When they move, when they retire, when they do something out of the ordinary, it's always big news. So Marquez, regardless of how much you expected it to happen, him leaving Honda is still amazing for the sport and huge news. Now today, essentially I'm going to break down in this video what it means for Mark, what it means for Honda, what it means for Ducati, Moto2, the rest of the GP field and Superbikes. So there's quite a bit to get through, so we're going to jump straight in and start with Mark himself. Now, he's been with the team since 2013, multiple championships with them, so many race wins, and essentially he's been dominating up until 2020. The preseason 2020 didn't go well. They brought new aero and essentially it was terrible, and the last day of testing they tried the old aero on the final evening and that kind of fixed it, and that was like their savior for their season. Now obviously he crashes in race 1, breaks the arm, and we kind of all know the story up until now where he's never been 100% fit, and when he has, you don't know if he is because the bike has been so bad. From my understanding, this year he's been fully fit for the first time since the start of the season, whereas he's always had little niggles throughout the 2 seasons that he's been back, even in 20, obviously 21 and 22 as well. He's just wasn't right. He had the, I think it's called diplopia with the eyes, where something I believe is something to do with your retina. No, by far not a medical doctor of any sort, but essentially double vision is what it comes down to. He got that in 2011 when he crashed. Can't remember where he crashed, but basically had to sit out the last couple of rounds and it's Stefan Bradl the world title. So it's been an issue in his career before, but anytime he gets banked to the head, it can happen, and basically if it happens enough times, from what I've read, it can stay permanently, and that you just have double vision, so you get severe motion sickness and all this. But currently he's pretty much fully fit. Now realistically, him leaving Honda was always probably going to happen regardless, unless it was McDoon era where Honda stayed dominant with the 500 like they did with the 500 with the current bike, and if they stayed premium top of the tier. But unfortunately, as the gizmos, ride-out devices, aero packages have come out, Honda have struggled. They've gone the wrong direction, whether that be stubbornness from Japan, whether it be people who've moved on from the project, and people who've promoted not being up to scratch. Kind of like what happens in Mercedes in Formula 1 at the moment, where some of the bigger guys have probably gone elsewhere in other categories of stuff like that, and the people that have come through into their positions maybe just not at that level, and that's why you see them slightly behind. And I reckon that's pretty much what happened to Honda as well, to be fair, over the few years. So it's going to be huge for Honda, because having a inhumane talent like Mark Marquez, what he can do on a motorbike, there's nobody that can do. Top Rack is the one that comes closest, but it's a completely different style. He's not having the front end saves on the elbow like Mark did, and it's just the only thing that I can kind of compare them is just how out of control the bike can get, and they both keep it on that limit of being out of control but in control. That's the only kind of correlation you can kind of join the dots with them, really. So there's very few people out there that can save the front, can ride at the limit, and like the likes of Johnny Ray and Alex Lowes were sitting down with Neil Hodgson recently, and Neil said this live on air, and he turned to them and goes, who is the number 1 rider in the world at the moment? Without a beat, they both said Mark Marquez. Now, Johnny Ray probably knows a thing about bike racing, and so does Alex Lowes, so there's no question that Marquez is still number 1 around the world. Now, the Honda issue is a bit more of an interesting one. We'll kind of get back to Marquez in a second, but next year it's looking currently like potentially Zarco on a factory bike alongside Joan Mir. Now that's a bit of youth and a bit of experience. 1 race win in the class between them. It's an interesting one. I think they'll stick with Mir if he stays with them and try and build a team around him. You need to remember as well, in 2027 we have a regulation change, and there's been rumours due to the top end speed that they might be changing back to 800s again, given that kind of platform another go. So when it's a new era, be a whole new bike. It might be even an RC214V, if that's even a thing that might come. It'll be the next generation of RC machines from Honda, and essentially they have a blank canvas now. Honda, they've lost Marquez. They're not going to do 2024 together. For me, they just need to take a massive step back from the project. Look at what they're doing. They've clearly got to the point where they're so far behind, they're throwing things at it, hoping that Marquez can catch it and make it a slam dunk. And in the current era, which I kind of don't like, that the fact that a rider of Marquez's caliber was that slow on that bike, it just shows how the bike now is it's gone very Formula 1-esque, where it could be 70% your equipment and 30% you, whereas GP for a long time was maybe 60% rider, 40% equipment. It was always the best riders won, and it didn't always mean the best bikes. Look at Casey, for example. He was brilliant in 07. They had a very strong package in some areas, but it wasn't an amazing bike. You could argue a lot of Honda wins for Mark were probably not the best bike. The Yamaha's probably better overall compared to in the time that Danny and Mark were teammates. Danny never really did much after 2013. Obviously he was strong in 13 and 14. 15 was okay, won races in 15, won races in 16. But just overall, I think was the last win 17 Mazzano, I'm gonna say, that day when he battled Valentino, or was that, no, that was 16. So his last win must have been in 16. Anyway, basically, when you saw Danny Pedrosa going backwards, the development was going into Marquez's hands, and that was huge for Honda because they were taking a special talent who rides in a very particular way and basing the bike development off his feedback and in more of his direction, saying, I want more of this, give me more of this, whereas the other drivers are going, no, we need more of that, and we need a lot more of that in that sense. So it was an interesting thing to see it all happen, but it's done now, and the move to Ducati isn't announced as of 10 past 10 on the 5th of the 10th for Thursday night. Overall, really, it's going to be tough to see them doing anything between now and the regulation change. GP at the moment, it's quite hard. If you look at Aprilia and a KTM are a good example as well, where they've made strides and steps in the right direction, but you don't really do one step over the winter and come in as potential championship challengers. It's a building thing. Like, you could imagine next year if KTM make a step again, then you go, okay, they can battle Brad Binder and whoever will be on the other 16 bikes they have in the paddock will be battling for the title, or you'd imagine. So if they make a step with the 24 bike, obviously, again, they've been coming for years, so they've been building and building and building, and they've been getting it wrong, and then they get it right, and eventually they've gotten themselves to the big boy table with Ducati and Aprilia at the moment. And Aprilia, I feel, just don't have the budget as they do with KTM having the Red Bull money. Now, of course, they're owned by the Piaggio Group and the money is there. They don't seem to get as much as it, so it all comes down to concessions, and there's a whole lot of issues there that have stopped them from making probably the steps that Red Bull KTM have made. But for me, with Ducati and Marquez, they'll be the number one targets coming into next season. And even if KTM make that step, and even if Aprilia make that step, I don't think, maybe Binder on the KTM, I don't think anyone else on the KTM, I don't expect a rookie Pedro Acosta to do enough. I think GP has changed, so when you get to GP, the aero devices, all the gizmos, as I like to call them, will be a lot to get your head around, and that'll be hard for a full first season with so many races and sprint races. The likes of a Marquez or a more experienced rider in the category would be a lot more well kind of fleshed out in terms of skill of managing a whole season on one of these bikes compared to a rookie, no matter how talented or quick he is. But it's massive news for the sport, and it's probably biggest news definitely since Valentino retired. The last time there was a move like this, it was Lorenzo to Ducati from Yamaha. That was always one of those moves that was happening for 4 years, kind of on and off. Every kind of 18 months that would pop its head up that he's leaving, and when Valentino came back, he was going to go then, and then the year later, and this and that, and eventually 2017 we saw it. Now, didn't work in the end, really. It was a failure. I know he won a couple of races on it, but it was kind of bad timing for when he left, and the injuries and the mechanicals he had and stuff like that, and just in the end kind of ended his career, because then he jumped on a Honda, and that was that, and I think really learns out more on him. Back before that, then you could maybe say KC to Honda, but I don't think that was a big of a thing, because we all knew that he was trying to get off that bike. Honda had a seat, and it all kind of made sense. And I'd say then back to as far as Valentino going from Honda to Yamaha, it's kind of the reverse of Valentino, because Valentino left the almighty, the all singing, all dancing V5 Honda. That was probably the equivalent of the current Red Bull car in F1. It was just domination by a level we've not seen since. And then he went on a Yamaha that was, its operating window was tight, it was not very consistent nor reliable, and wins in his first season. Now that's again a story for another day, but Marquez is leaving the Yamaha in that situation and going to the V5 now. Obviously he's going to Ducati, but you kind of get the idea that he's leaving the kind of bike that everything's going wrong with it. It's not very consistent, it has reliability issues with the ECU and stuff, and a lot of the electronics. So the bottom line really this video is that, like, it's going to change so much, and what I mean by that is we're going to try and figure out now what happens to the other seats. So immediately we have an empty seat at Repsol. So Zarco is leaving Pramac this year and he's going to Honda. Now he's a Honda contract to sign, or has signed with Honda I should say, and he's in the LCR team for now. Now at the moment, since he's contracted on under paper to Honda, you imagine they'll dot the I's and cross the T's and get him on a Repsol bike for 2024. Now that would be a good idea for them. Get him developing the bike in the factory colours, get all the Japanese engineers for Honda, the HRC men around them, and get that bike developed into a weapon for the future. And again, using Mir's young Suzuki brain that came from the lovely inline 4 Suzuki, and kind of make the bike a bit more tame and rideable and get closer to the Ducatis, the KTMs and the Aprilias. And then we have LCR. Then we've Nakagami, we know he's staying, and then if Zarco goes, then we have another seat at LCR. Now the names that are in the list, right, are not all for the LCR seat, but we have talks of one, Jack Miller being bought out of his KTM contract to go to Repsol Honda, and Zarco would stay in LCR. That would make room for Pedro Acosta. So there's the Moto2 link that I talked about or mentioned. Zarco does go to Repsol. We'll go to that universe now. Then we go over to the World Superbike paddock. We have Rinaldi, who was mentioned coming over to maybe Moto2. Maybe he gets a Honda seat. Again, unlikely. I don't see that happening. Also, Iker Lecuona. So he was in and out of their LCR team and the factory team when Mark was injured a few times this year, and did a pretty decent job. I rate Iker quite a lot. It's a shame really to see such a talented man in Superbikes. I think he deserves a career at the moment in GP. I feel it was harsh that he only got the kick from KTM, and he didn't really, there was nothing he didn't do that year that could impress me. He was a solid rider on, at that time, wasn't an amazing bike, so definitely think he deserves another whip, and I think he does kind of want to get back. I don't think he's a fan very much of being in Superbikes. I think he believes he should be in GP, and sure, why not? So there you go, straight away. There's a couple of possibilities from the Superbike because no one else really being mentioned. Now we go back to who else is in the GP class. So I've already mentioned Jack Miller. Another name is Maverick Vinales, goes to Repsol on, doesn't Zarco say, is put in LCR. And Massimo Rivali, the Aprilia's head man, who's basically done the Delinea job at Aprilia. I hope I'm getting his name right. He basically goes with him if that happens. Now again, I don't see that happening either. Honda going out and getting a big name signing is the worst thing in my opinion for them. They really need to go and get someone who either brings Zarco up as an experienced campaigner who has the experience of Ducati and Yamaha from the years, obviously a bit of KTM too, but kind of glance over that. He's excited about the prospect of going, well, not the prospect, he's excited of getting on the Honda, and hopefully he can turn the tide against him and start to rebuild them up to what the HRC name is known for really, and that's winning. So he's all aboard the HRC ship. Now, if he gets a factory seat, brilliant for him. Mir at this point will pretty much stay. So that's kind of the HRC Repsol team probably confirmed now. If Maverick was to go, it's a big name, big salary, big results expected. Now, no disrespect to Maverick, but what can he bring that Marcus couldn't in terms of riding ability? Essentially, to my mind, nothing. In terms of mentality as well, I think Marquez would be a much better rider for Honda, so I don't think that would have been any option really, and I don't think Rivale would want to leave Aprilia after kind of everything he's started over the last 3 years. I believe he's there now. Was it 3 years? I think he came in around E&O in a time, so he's there a good few years now, and that's really made a big step under his kind of management. So I can see why they want him, because they need someone to captain and lead the ship out of these rough waters. The other one, which is a kind of again wild card as such, but it's a bit more of a kind of ticks all the boxes. You kind of get a decently young rider who's probably can develop a bike, but he's also a bit of a superstar in his own right, and that is Miguel Oliveira. Now, again, another Aprilia man they're trying to get off, get him into potentially the factory seat, or maybe get him in for LCR. It's another one that you just don't know if it would happen. In my eyes, if that happens, that means Fabio could jump ship to Aprilia. Now, I think Miguel is not silly, and he probably realises as well that he's better staying at Aprilia. So, again, don't really think that will happen. Right now, my personal opinion, or what I think would be best for Honda, is promote Zarco to the Repsol team. Keep Mir alongside him, give them everything they need, all the tools, let them go crazy with the bike setting and direction, and just have a fresh take really on what a Honda MotoGP bike should be. Obviously, we already have Nakagami, and then stick Iker Lecuona on the LCR machine. I rate Iker, and I think he'd be a good man for testing a GP bike, and again, I do believe he deserves to be in the paddock. So that would be my Honda lining for next year. And again, going on to the future, you really don't know. Now, we're going to finish off the prospect talking about the mouth-watering part of the video, where we kind of talk and chat about Marquez on a Ducati. Now, essentially, Cal Crutchlow believes nobody else should turn up if he gets on a Ducati. Now, he's not announced yet he's going to Ducati, but like, let's not beat around the bush. That ink is freshly signed off, and that's dry, and all that is absolutely sealed in that Grassini will have a 73 and a 93 next year, and 2 Marquezes. That's a scary prospect for any team owner, but it could be. It's crazy, because we'll go back to Valentino. If Valentino was on a Yamaha and struggling, but everybody knew he was the world champion back then, and then put him on a V5, he would have wiped the floor, and he probably would have done even better than he did when he was on it, because he would have come with a kind of having to prove himself, a bit more of that attitude, and something Valentino was very good at. But with Marquez going on to that Ducati, everybody knows it's the best bike. Everybody knows Delaney has made a massive weapon of a bike in the GP, Des Medici bikes over the last, I suppose, since 16, 17 is when they first started becoming weapons. Obviously, it took them a couple of the years with Davi where they probably stagnated a small bit, and Marquez probably just made them a little sweat a bit more than they probably needed to, really. And then they got Lorenzo and all that. So the bike has always been there. I just don't think they've had the rider for it. Now we've had the Pecco era, now we've Vashnini and Martin and all that. So with Marquez jumping onto a year-old Ducati, it's going to be so interesting to see what happens in terms of just pre-season, the first test, the first ride, his first feedback. It's essentially, again, the big move. It's Rossi to Ducati. It's the huge news again, and there's just going to be so much hype around it. And again, these superstars just have so much kind of media draw of the Valentinos, the Schwantz, the Marquez and such. So there'll be so much media frenzy around this for the next, God knows, year, I suppose, until we get to the midpoint of next year, where then he'll probably announce he's going to KTM or Aprilia, or Jesus, he could even go back to Honda if they sort their stuff out. But it's going to be a very interesting couple of months now. I just wanted to kind of get today's video out now and just kind of get my thoughts out, because I knew with no GPMs again, wouldn't have the podcast to talk about it, so just a small video format now. I'll leave it there. Want you to let me know in the comments down below what your feedback is. Do you reckon, just how do you see the next 6 months up until the start of next year, I suppose, next season and all that? How does that play out? Do you think everybody's getting a little excited that Marcus is going to wipe the floor? Do you think Marcus is going to struggle a bit more? Do you think he's finished? Do you think he's gone over the hill? Or do you think Marcus Ducati will be the Verstappen, Red Bull, Rossi, Yamaha kind of dominance and just wipe the floor where nobody can get close to him now? You're another Ducati rider as well. You must be thinking, well, I have my work cut out for 2024, so it'll be interesting the whole dynamic of him inside the Ducati team and how they support him with equipment and how does Gresini hold up as a team. And again, like, they're definitely not a championship winning outfit, and they haven't been before now. Obviously they won races with Ine Bastianini last year, but the difference between having Bastianini and having one of the all-time greats riding your bike and having something a bit of a chip on the shoulder to prove. So I am going to leave it there. I hope you have enjoyed. Again, I'm really interested to read some of your feedback down below, so let me know in the comments what you think of this whole situation, who's going to take whose seat, any other kind of theories that have come out of the blue over the last while and I missed. Maybe there's been so many every day that just you don't really know who's going to go there. There's so many people tip really to jump on the Repsol bike. If it's not Zarco, and then like if Lecona leaves Honda, who takes his HRC bike then in Superbike? So again, Mark is leaving Honda has just created a massive earthquake through the biking paddock really in a lot of senses. So it's really interesting. But I'm going to leave it there. Hope you have enjoyed. If you did, drop a like and a comment down below. Subscribe to see more. I should catch you all in a future video. Thank you for watching. Slán go fóill.